I'm the wrestling coach at Central High School, and I have also a teacher, and I've got a homeroom class that meets every day. I don't know what year it was exactly. It had to be at the start of my career because that's when I did wrestling. And I had some wrestlers in my homeroom. And there was in particular a guy who had moved to Flint from Wisconsin and was very much an outdoors boy. He was on the wrestling team. He was on the football team. He would go to the Sport and Boat Show every day down at the old IMA building in downtown Flint. And he would come back each day and talk about Tuffy Truesdell and Victor the Wrestling Bear. He talked about how the bear would vanquish the various yo-yos who tried to wrestle it. He kept saying, starting on Monday and working through the week, that I should wrestle the bear. And I told him that I may look stupid, but I'm not, and I'm not wrestling any bear. That's just crazy. But he came back every day. He was persistent. Finally, somewhere in the week, I got stupid. And I said to him, look, I wouldn't wrestle a bear for free, but if you got $50, I would do it. So he started trying to get people to promise to pay into this fund for me to wrestle a bear. And I found out that people may promise, but they don't necessarily come through. So as the week went on, we would talk, and we talked about different wrestling moves. Did somebody try this? Yeah, what happened? Well, the bear popped him on the head and knocked him down, sat on him, or whatever. But nobody was successful against the bear. He got to about Thursday, and he said he had about $35 in pledges, and I said that's not enough. On Friday, he came in. He still didn't have $50, so I figured after homeroom, which was early in the day, that I was home free, except I had an enemy in the administration. He went to this guy, and in the last hour of the day, he got on the PA system to the entire school and said, "Newsflash, Joe Eufinger, the wrestling coach, is going to wrestle Victor the Wrestling Bear tonight at the IMA." And at that point, I figured I was pretty much obligated to go. And so my next was probably the hardest thing I had to do, which was to go home and tell my wife, Laura, that whatever we had planned for that night was off because we were going to the Sport and Boat Show so that I could wrestle Victor the Wrestling Bear. But Laura said I was more obligated to stay alive because we hadn't been married that long, and if I did this, she'd probably kill me. So we went down. I signed up to wrestle Victor the Wrestling Bear, and there were quite a number of Central students that were there, so I couldn't disappoint them. Laura was, started out being a kind of teary about this thing. But when it got close to when I actually had to wrestle Victor, she did elbow a few people out of the way and get to the front near the mat. All right, so we're set. And Tuffy, I think, was happy because he had a good-sized crowd actually watching his ridiculous Victor the Wrestling Bear do his thing. He had Victor on a chain, attached to a collar on his neck, and he stood Victor up, standing up full height. He was probably he had to be over 7 feet. And so I'm on one side of the mat and he's on the other. I hadn't really come up with a particular plan, but I figured I'll go ahead, just rather than let him come to me, I would go to him. And so I went at him right away and hit him, and I think he must have tripped because that sure wasn't me. But he ended up falling down onto the mat on his back, and I jumped on top of him. For me, it was a wrestling match. For him, it was a love affair. He kept trying to French kiss me through his muzzle, and his breath was a little shaky. There was a lot of lint in his fur. Other than that, it was a pretty nice experience. But I had him on his back and kept him there for a while. But as I found out, you can't really pin a bear because their shoulders are so round. And so I'm there, and the bear is pawing me and kissing me and whatever, and I'm kind of running him around on the ground, on the mat. And that went on for a while. And then Tuffy came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, why don't you get off him? And I did. And so I won, when you get right down to it. He got me off to the side, and because there was such a big crowd, he said, look, hang around. I want you to wrestle a bear again in a little bit. So he let a couple other people in, and they didn't fare as well. The bear basically conked him on the head, knocked him down, and sat on him. And so there were 2 or 3 of those that happened. And then he said, okay, why don't you come back for the big finale? So now I'm kind of fired up. I think that I've got this bear's number. He gets the bear stood up, and I'm on the other side of the mat, and I ran at him, and I hit him as hard as I could, put my chin right on his chest, and I'm trying to, a big form tackle from football. I hit him as hard as I could, and he went and didn't move a quarter of an inch. So now I'm hugging him, and the lint, it's getting into my throat, and we're kind of there. We battle for a while, standing up, and then we kind of get down to the mat, and we're both kind of facing each other. It goes on a little bit like that. Finally, Tuffy said, well, it's a draw, and I got off. Then I was supposed to get $50 from Tuffy for not being pinned by the bear, which never happened. And I was supposed to get $50 from the people that had pledged to get me to wrestle. I ended up getting about $15. I tried to soothe the nervous heart of my wife by taking her to Angelo's Coney Island for a little late snack, and so we used that money for that. Now, later on, Sam Paraskis, who was a teacher at Central and on my football staff, he heard an interview with Tuffy Truesdell, and he said that there were only 2 people that had never been pinned by the bear. One of them was a truck driver from someplace, and the other one was a coach from down in the Flint area. So that would have been me. So I vanquished Victor the Wrestling Bear, and that has become part of the lore of Central High School for many years.